me shelter, shelter. Simple life, it's all we want to live. Give me food, give me clothes, give me love, and give me shelter, shelter. Yeah.
So welcome, family, to another powerful episode of the We Too Our Librarians Movement podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Ayiti Williams. Today, we open a new chapter in our collective journey entitled Reclaiming Africa, the Rise of Revolutionary Leadership and the Awakening of the People. This series, as we all know, seeks to reframe our understanding of revolution, not as chaos, but as consciousness. We will explore what it truly means, to be revolutionary, to embody revolutionary leadership, and how those before us, named like Marcus Garvey, Nathaniel, Traoré, Rosa Parks, Dr. King, Malcolm X, Julius Nyerere, and Muhammad Gaddafi laid the foundation for Africa rebirth. But just as a tradition, to welcome to the show, we have today our own Mr. Duopu, as well as Nathaniel Herron. So we'll take this time to have them both introduce themselves. We'll start with Mr. Nathaniel Herron, followed by Mr. Duopu.
Well, first of all, I'd like to extend my profound thanks and appreciation to the host, Mr. Ayiti Williams, for providing this platform. And I'm also proud and privileged to share this unique podcast with my friend and brother, Mr. Mansfield Duopu. I'm looking forward to a meaningful discussion. For those of you who don't know me or who have not heard about me before, my name is Mr. Nathaniel Y. Herron, who is always right about at least 99.9% of the time. So stay tuned to We Too Movement as we go into this all-important topic. We encourage you guys to be steadfast and focus, and at least if you can share the podcast with other people that you think will have interest, we truly appreciate. Thank you very much, Mr. Ayiti Williams.
Thank you. Mr. Duopu.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mansfield G. Duopu. I'm a social scientist, political scientist. I'm honored to be on this platform once again to share my knowledge, to also learn from my learned co-panelist, Mr. Herron. And I want to thank Mr. Williams for the invitation. And I hope people are watching and listening, and that they can also chime in and to have a very robust discussion. So thanks, and I look forward to a very lively and entertaining discussion.
Thank you both very much for joining in tonight. As a tradition, we would try to share the show just before we actually get into the nitty-gritty. So if you have your phone, you can just 1 minute. Let's try to. I just share the show on WhatsApp. I'm trying to share as well on Facebook and all the social media outlets. So we can do Facebook if you have your Facebook. I'm sharing it now. I just did WhatsApp. I did Facebook. I'm going to go ahead and also share it here on maybe Messenger and things like that, so we can have as many people, because this is a very thought-provoking topic. So if you have done so, and then again, we'll, just for the sake of those of you who are joining in tonight, we'll examine the arc of revolutionary thought, not just as history, but as a living framework. A framework that parallels what's happening right now in places like Burkina Faso, where new leadership is challenging colonial legacies and reclaiming autonomy over land, culture, and consciousness. Again, I'm honored to be joined throughout this series by two insightful minds, Mr. Mansfield G. Duopu and Mr. Nathaniel Y. Herron, as we decode the past, dissect the present, and design the future. Let's begin by grounding ourselves in some definitions. Mr. Duopu, we went ahead, as well as Mr. Herron. We decided to break this series down in segments. So we do have our first segment here. I think defining the landscape. And then we would just go right in, and then hopefully we can do a few, maybe 4 to 5 questions today. I know we don't have enough time. Come back next week, hopefully, and then until we're able to exhaust this particular series. So before we reclaim anything, we must understand what it is we are reclaiming and why it's or was taken. So let's start with the basic. So, Mr. Duopu, we'll go ahead and start with you. What is a revolutionary? That's just the first question. What is a revolutionary?
A revolutionary thought process.
It's just I just wanted to, as a noun, revolutionary. Maybe
who is a revolutionary?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I think a revolutionary is somebody who is conscious, somebody who understands socio-economic and historical well-being, somebody who have seen a complete divide in the social strata of a society, and somebody who wants to, for better or for worse, right the wrongs, in the society. So a revolutionary is not. Sometimes people misconstrue it to be a reactionary, because there are two different things. Sometimes revolution can veer off and it can become reactionary, because once a revolution is instituted, it is geared towards righting the wrongs in society. Is geared towards making people whole again, making people believe that every policy decision has to derive from the people. So that's what a revolutionary seeks to do. Sometimes it can be violent, depending on the status quo. But most revolutions are non-violent. It means that it comes from sometimes a very economic interest or pressure group. Sometimes it's not really organized, it's just spontaneous. And we've seen that recently in Africa, in the Arab Spring. We've seen that, like you alluded to, in the emergence of a military junta in Africa, in the Sahel, that have tried to weed out Western influence. So these are things that revolutionaries do, in their societies. So I'm sure later on we will kind of dissect different revolutionary actions. But a revolutionary is somebody who wants to reinvigorate in the social consciousness of his people that decisions should emanate from the people and not from any overarching political authority whose main intention is not to address the economic and social issues of the people, but to address the concerns of the political class.
Thank you very much. I'm going to pivot to Mr. Herron down there quickly, and then I'm not going to ask you the same question. So we'll just ask you now: what is a revolutionary thought? Then now that we've defined what a is.
Well, the fact of the matter here, the topic of the discussion helps us to at least define what a revolutionary thought process is. Reclaiming Africa. We talk about decolonization of Africa. In other words, removing colonialism from Africa. And once you do that, sometimes you have political instability. A revolutionary thought within the context in which it's being used in this discussion. It's just a forcible overthrowing of a system that was just now working for the people into a new system of governance. That's the way I see it. From the context in which revolutionary thought process is being used in this discussion of reclaiming Africa, it's just a forceful overthrowing of an unwarranted system that has been instituted and affecting the lives of our people. So once you remove that system, you bring a new system that will help to improve the life of our people. So going in depth with that discussion, then we look at pre-colonial period. As you may be aware, most African countries got their independence during the 1950s and during the 60s and even during the 80s. Zimbabwe, for example, of course, South Africa with their apartheid system, they had a bunch of revolutionaries. And they were all across Africa with one mindset of Pan-Africanism. And so revolutionary in the context is simply just overthrowing a bad system and introducing a better system that will enhance the livelihood of the people. That's the way I see revolution being defined within the context in which it's being used.
Thank you very much. And I know just before we went ahead to start the show, we on the back end, I sent both of you a snippet of what tonight's show is going to be all about. That way it'll give us a sense to really look at, because a lot of times people once they hear about revolutionary thought, who a revolutionary is, or what it is, people start to panic. And all the thing about is war. So I like both definitions. I think it is giving our viewers a sense of what we're trying to the picture we're trying to actually bring out here. So I too went ahead and I was looking at what a revolutionary thought is, and then the information I got: a mindset rooted in justice, self-determination, and liberation. It sees beyond the present system's limits and imagines new future. So with that being said, we'll go back to Mr. Duopu to answer the question, what is a revolutionary leadership? That's what we want to know now. Having defined who a revolutionary is, what it is, and then what a revolutionary thought process is.
Well, you talk about revolutionary leadership.
Yes.
Sometimes revolutionary leadership is not in the domain of an individual or group of people, but the leadership of any revolution is couched in the domain of the people. Because if a people in a society who have been marginalized over a long period of time, who have historically been disenfranchised by the political class, come to the point where their material and other needs are not met in that society, and they've come to the point where they believe that there has to be some change for their own benefit. Somebody within that cycle, sometimes it's not based on any plebiscite, it's not based on any election. Somebody can rise based on that person's charisma. Somebody can emerge and lead that revolution with the backing of the people. So people don't have to go through elections, don't have to go through any democratic, so-called democratic process, but it can be very, very spontaneous in the sense that it becomes an economic action. I mean, it's not organized, it's not structured per se, but that action is taken before even any organization can be thought about or any leadership can be thought about. But there are also times where somebody within that society who have been given that power, who derive that power from that source. The people give that power based on your your work you've done in that society. And it's clear that this person is a clear leader of this revolution. Sometimes it happens like that. So revolutionary leadership cannot just be based on organization. Sometimes it's just chaotic. In the middle of that chaos, in the midst of that chaos, somebody emerges and somebody takes the mantle, and that person legitimizes himself through the conscious abrogation of the people, and the person becomes the leader of the revolution. So it's not always organized. Sometimes it's just spontaneous. In that midst of that chaos, somebody emerges. So that leadership structure might not be viewed within the prism of a democratic leadership, what we have through military takeovers and other actions, because in the politics, and we'll come to what precipitates military intervention in any kind of political system. We can come to that. That could be a separate discussion for a separate day. But when we talk about revolutionary leadership in the context of Africa, historically, it has not been any organized revolutionary action. These things have always been spontaneous and have always been anomic. So leadership can emerge in a way, but it has to be legitimized over time by the people. That is the key underlying operational term, the legitimacy of that action by the people in that polity.
Thank you. I'm going to stick right here with our third question. And Mr. Herron, leadership that seeks transformation, one would say, is this theme revolutionary leadership rather than reform. And someone would say it centers people over profit, justice over comfort, and long-term liberation over short-term compromise. What's your thought about revolutionary leadership?
Well, in most instances, revolutionary leadership comes about through spontaneous combustion. In other words, it has not been well organized. You do not have that perfect synchronization of organizational structure. Instead, people are just moved with the instinct that it's about time for us to move. And once they do that, within that process, a leadership emerges, sometimes based upon life experience. Like, for example, like in the case of Liberia, we saw the revolutionary that occurred on April 12, 1980. With the 17 enlisted men, and the late president Samuel Doe, he was maybe the highest ranking military person at the time, and so based upon that, they told him he had to take a lead. Now, but let's get back to the original topic: reclaiming Africa. It's a very, very big topic. Reclaiming Africa. So if we say we try to reclaim Africa, it means that Africa is under siege. It means that Africa is not being governed and controlled by Africans. Therefore, we must revolutionize Africa. That's the way I personally see it. Now, we have had so many true revolutionaries. For example, the latest we had was Colonel Mohammed Gaddafi. To me, he's a revolutionary leader. Gaddafi was deeply rooted within that Pan-Africanist symbol of reclaiming the land of Africa and making use of the resources that God has blessed the continent with. For example, he talked about United Africa. He talked about using one currency. Can you imagine? One currency. He talked about Africans traveling all across the length and breadth of the continent with all passport or visa, at least one passport in your hand. Because based upon that, we know the story. He was savagely murdered. And the spin that was put on it, well, we have 4 decades of one man ruling Libya. And the Libyan people now have the opportunity to govern. Since the death of Gaddafi, look at where is Libya today. Total breakdown of law and order. The people are suffering over there. For example, I'm sorry, you would like to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to, because I know you went ahead a little further. We just not bad at all, so I just wanted to come in because that was like our third segment of the program tonight. But I don't want to cut you off, so I'll let you land, and then I'll come in.
Yeah, so revolutionary leadership, it has been around for a very long time, and I don't want to go ahead of the questions that you have, then it means that you're going to take the juice from all of it. But I would like to say this point. I'll go back to my country. I'll go back to my country, Liberia, again.
Okay.
Liberia. I don't care what anybody say about Charles Taylor. Charles Taylor was a visionary. He was a true revolutionary. He meant well for that country. Again, this is my personal opinion. He wanted the same thing. One currency. Let us use our meager resources that God has given us to benefit the people. Whatever oil reserve we have in our country, let us be able to train people. And that way, Liberia will be able to explore the oil. Let Liberia love one another. Other people didn't like it. People in position of authority in the world, they didn't like it. I spoke to the late Thomas Sankara. I spoke to the old man, I think probably maybe 6-7 years ago. And he told me, look, my son, oil was discovered in Liberia in 1972. 1972, that's when oil was discovered. That's what Tom Sankara told me. I'm not a geologist to go and authenticate or to verify what he told me, but he told me oil was discovered around 1971, 1972. And he said, all along, they wanted to have explored the oil. But there was some little hitches somewhere. And according to him, it was because of that oil reserve. But one of the main reasons why Taylor was removed from power. According to Mr. Tongo, he said other powerful countries asked Taylor, it's time for us to explore the oil. Let us extract the oil. And what Taylor told them, Liberia should have at least 65% share in whatever oil exploration. And whatever company that's going there to explore the oil or remove or extract the oil should have 35%. And they said no. And one of Taylor's point was...
So, Mr. Herron, I don't want to cut you off, but I think those are pretty good examples that will be used in questions that are going to come here in a few minutes.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So if we can just reserve them,
yeah,
when the question come, then you can you make the parallel, so that way, you know what I mean, then the conversation will flow.
Most definitely, Mr. Host.
Yeah, okay. You say give you a second?
Oh, no, I said most definitely, Mr. Host. You can go ahead. You have the flow. The flow.
Okay, so then we're done with the definition. Like I think Herron already was ahead of the game. Now we'll go to mapping the historical arc. Now that we've defined the terms, let's take a journey now through the roots of African revolutionary struggle. This is what I want us to do, because what I want us to do to create a picture, we're going somewhere. So, for example, from Nathaniel insurrection against slavery to Marcus Garvey's Black to Africa's movement, from Kwame Touré's Pan-Africanism, just like you talk about here, Herron to Rosa Parks' Quiet Defiance, from Malcolm X and Dr. King's ideological evolution to very African socialism, and from Muhammad Gaddafi that you just mentioned, Pan-African vision, to Thomas Sankara in Burkina Faso. Each of these, they didn't just resist, they actually imagined, just like you said, the whole thing. They thought about it. They saw Africa not as a victim, but a force. So now this will bring us to this whole, because I'm trying to see how we can make a parallel here with what's going on in Burkina Faso. So the parallel with Burkina Faso now. So here we are in 2025, witnessing a new emergence of Burkina Faso, where young, bold leaders like Captain Traoré, Ibrahim Traoré, are channeling the spirit of Sankara. They are rejecting neo-colonial interference and championing sovereignty, education, and resource ownership. Now, Aaron, the question will go to you.
Sure.
Can one be revolutionary without holding political office?
Well, the answer could be described in twofold. I would say it is almost like a fleeting illusion to be pursued to say that you will be the head of a revolution, but you will not acquire political power. Only in rare instances you can have those things happening, because you are the visionary, you are the face of the revolution. So if you are the face of the revolution and you guys succeed, you have to come up with a national agenda. You must have a national agenda before, or you are well organized. You must have a national agenda before you can even try to say, you know what, these are our plans. We are revolutionaries. We want to change the social order in favor of a new system. And in order to do that, these are things that we have to do. Now, once we succeed, then what next? What do we do next? How do we govern? So it is almost difficult for you to be a head of a revolution, a successful revolution, with all you having an acquisition of political power, because people will look up to you. But again, in some instances, you can do that. For example, in Ghana, the former and late president, John Jerry Rawlings, he was a revolutionary as well. He was very successful in at least removing the old order. He did not participate in the government. He withdrew and went back in the barracks. It was the second time. That's what some of us were told. It was the second time that he came and said, you know what, I will be the one to spearhead this ship. I will be the one to captain this ship. So the question whether you can be a revolutionary or successful as a leader of a successful revolution with all you acquiring political power, I tell you, in most instances, Mr. Host, it is very difficult. You will have to hold political power because you will have to hold a line. If you don't hold a line, things might fall apart. That's the way I see it, though.
All right. With that being said, I don't know. We'll pivot to because we'll get to some of the things you were talking about. So we'll pivot back to Mr. Duopu. Mr. Duopu, what qualities define a revolutionary in the 21st century? Would you walk us through?
What qualities that define a revolutionary in the 21st century?
Yes.
Have always been the same qualities that have defined revolutionary in time past. First of all, the major quality is the deference to the will of the people. You know, that's to me that's the sine qua non of a quality of any revolutionary leader or any leader per se. The deference to the will of the people. Because in a revolution, when especially violent takeover, there's always chaos, there's always, destruction, other social dislocation. But the ability for those in the hegemony of the revolution, the leadership, to defer to the will of the people is so key insofar as stabilizing the society, insofar as gaining legitimacy. Because every revolution seeks to do what? Improve the welfare of the people. And what they espouse, right? We hear that in their proclamation, in their agenda, in their deliberations, whatever speeches they make after the revolution, is about changing the lives of the people. Well, if you want to change the lives of the people, I guess the people themselves have to be involved in that whole process of changing their own lives. Rather than coming again and superimposing a hegemonic power over the people and just making sure that their life is in misery again, then what is the essence of the revolution? If you're coming back to re-victimize the very people who you claim to be liberating. It's counterintuitive. It doesn't make no sense. And we've seen it historically, in Africa, where a band of people come, overthrow a government, met out the very injustice they claim to be wiping away, and there's be another coup, another counter coup, and we've seen that because they have not deferred to the will of the people. We'll come back to that deference. Deferring the will to the will of the people is so key. Because the people are the custodian of the power that you have. The people devolve that power to you. They will it to you. It is incumbent upon the revolutionary to make sure that they always seek the people's approbation. What are the things that we need to work on? Give the power back. Make sure the people are also in the driver's seat because they know better of how to deal with their material well-being. So most times, most revolutions falter because they fail to defer to the will of the people. So if you want to have that in modernity, in the 21st century that we have today, we've seen military takeovers, we've seen the rise of popular leaders, we've seen, recently in the Sahel, where there have been 3 military takeovers and the emergence of new military junta in the Sahel, by young, military personnel. But we also see that there are also issues in society because what is obtaining now, there's no democracy, right? So everything that comes from the leader's mouth is almost like a law, it's based on an edict. It's not based on popular consensus. It's not based on debate. It's not based on any, compromise here and there because what the power structure needs to be in any society. So all those channels of consensus building, debate, all those channels of compromises in the society, those things have been shut off. It only takes one person who makes all the decisions. So is that an action that furthers the will of the people? No. It also sends the people back in time. Why should the motive might be good, but also there will be instances, there will be situations where the rights of the people will be curtailed because the revolutionary will say they are fulfilling certain mandates, but they're not deferring to the will of the people. I come back to that. That deference to the will of the people is sine qua non. It eclipses every other thing. If you're not going to do that, then the whole essence of a revolutionary action is just based on, people personal, self-seeking agendas. Is that based on the people's agendas? Because there's no plebiscite, there's no consensus building in society. The people have not been consulted on major domestic or foreign policy, actions. So then what do you have? You have this, same, status quo that you thought you was going to be changed to a new era of, political participation. So it affects the very people that it was initially sought to have benefited. So it's like a duality of phenomena on the continuum. One action is geared towards helping the people. Another action kind of circumvent that initial motive. So in the 21st century, like I said, in those days, like 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th century, where we've seen revolutionary actions by Genghis Khan, by other revolutionary leaders in history, it is mandatory that you always defer to the will of the people.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now we will circle back to Mr. Herron, and I think Mr. Herron, you're already farsighted ahead of the game. So I want to bring to your attention this question. Hopefully, you can dissect it in depth. What were the core philosophies of leaders like, I would say, Charles Taylor, Garvey, Traoré, or Gaddafi?
Well, I would like to revert to Mr. Duopu's last comment that he said you should defer to the will of the people. In most extenuating circumstances where revolution, and I will get back to your question, Mr. Host, about the core philosophy of someone like Marcus Garvey, Charles Hill, and the rest of the guy. I will get back to you, but I want to respond to Mr. Duopu, where he talked about deferring to the will of the people. Once you use a forcible means to remove a legitimate government of power, it is almost difficult for you to defer to the people. It's almost difficult for you to ask them what they want, simply because you are operating outside of the confines of the law. They have a constitution. So in most instances, people that use forceful means to overthrow a government, the very first thing they do is to suspend the constitution. And once the constitution is suspended, it means the civilian, which of course we all know, they have more people being civilian as opposed to a militarism. So the military junta, they will institute what they call decreed. It's just order. It means the first thing, we suspend the constitution. It means you, Mr. C, as a civilian, you can't tell me, say, based upon the constitution, you are in violation of article this and section this and this. You can't do that because they have already told you, Ayiti, we suspend the constitution. We are operating on a decree, a law, as we see fit or as we deem fit. So if Mr. Duopu is saying you got to go back to the people, the revolutionaries are not going back to the people. Because if they wanted to have gone back to the people, they would have used a constitutional means to acquire power. But they use different means. In most instances in Africa, they use violent coup to overthrow government. So you cannot defer to the people because you defer to the people.
Excuse me, this will be my pushback.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
This will be my pushback, and we've seen it over time, we heard it over time, that people come to power to change the material welfare of the people, to change the, to right the historical wrongs of the people. So it becomes so counterintuitive if the very people are not deferred to in making major decisions that affect, the very people who you claim. That what I said is like a duality of phenomenon. So then that's not actually a revolutionary action. It's crafted in self-seeking agendas. That's why these actions, people think they are revolutionary actions, are not really revolutionary actions. In the true sense of a revolutionary action, it's about social consciousness. It's about social consciousness. It's about making sure the people are the beneficiaries of their land resources or any God-given resources, even their human capital. That is the whole essence. We've seen it in Arab Spring, where a street seller, just a vendor, had an altercation with security forces. He was beaten, he was killed. And that led to serious overthrow of the president of Tunisia, Bourguiba, the president of Egypt, Mubarak, and other Arab leaders. The entire Arab world,
all of them
from that single unknown street seller who, in his action of social protest, ignited an entire continent, an entire world per se, and brought leaders to their needs and made leaders in those areas to make sure the needs of those people were taken very seriously. So if you have an action that seeks towards changing the lives of the people, and you prefer not to defer to the will of the people, then it's kind of, it runs contrary to logic, really. that's just a little pushback.
All right. So then, with that being said, for those of you who are just tuning, you're watching the We Too Are Liberians Movement platform, the platform that speaks to and for the masses. Tonight we have our two dynamic guests, and our topic for tonight is actually reclaiming Africa, the rise of revolutionary leadership, and the awakening of a people. So, Mr. Herron, I'm going to go back to you with that question because
sure.
The question here is
the core
what
philosophy
of leaders like I would say Garvey, Kwame Traoré, Gaddafi. I know you like Charles Taylor, so I want to also include him because I know they all, to a large extent, maybe had somewhat similar philosophies.
It's just all about the emancipation of Africa. It's just all about decolonizing Africa, because those guys that you name, they feel, and rightfully so, that Africa is still a colony of the Western world. So in order for them to actually extricate the Western power from Africa, they decided to do it through a radical means. Whether they were methodic in the process, whether they were far-sighted, they felt that in order to remove Western influence, they would have to have a revolution. Now, the Taylor you talk about, let's start with Gaddafi. In fact, let me go back to Mr. Duopu's point, where he talked about the Arab Spring. It is true, just a street peddler, a bread seller, for example. The Tunisian government had a city ordinance. A city ordinance in the sense that you cannot sell on the street. And this man has a bachelor's degree. But a bachelor's degree, he doesn't have a job. So he was somehow self-employed to sell bread. And like the way he referred to said, the security apparatus jumped in, no, you can't sell. So it was out of frustration. He gaslighted himself. Can you imagine? Put gas on yourself and burn yourself because you expect the government to provide that enabling environment that will make you to thrive. Especially when they told you, say, once you go to school, you play by the rules, you will succeed. You will have employment opportunity. So he did that. It became a continental uprising, a regional uprising, especially those guys that were considered to be the Arab, all the way up North Africa. You saw what happened? He just made mention of Hosni Mubarak. Hosni Mubarak government was overthrown right in Egypt. We had 3 sons. They put them in cage. They were in cages. Gaddafi also died in the process. So that's a spontaneous, when it says spontaneous revolution, that's what occurred. Now, in places like Liberia, it was never spontaneous. Instead, people had the quest and desire because of the unpopularity of the then president, or at least the regime that was in power. People started to agitate political instability. And in doing so, people got brainwashed. For example, we had a one-party system in the country, 122 years. Governance, one party, the True Win Party, from 1847 all the way up to 1980. One-party system. People got tired with that one-party rule. But they had different means. They had different means of going about and bringing about changes. You have Moja. I think Mr. Mansfield can talk more about Moja. I don't know whether you're still on Moja. But you have Movement of Justice headed by Dr. Tupa Nanti Potet. His point of vision of bringing changes in the library. In fact, Moja came about, I think, 1973. His way of revolutionizing the country was to educate the natives. That's how come he started talking about net school. In fact, Romo had it like, I think President Doe went to D12 high school, net school. I don't know what grade he's stopping. Now, the other guys or the other progressive, like G. Bacchus Matthew or Deacon Carla or Twan Gray and the rest of those guys, they had a socialist mentality. They were not pro-capitalism. The Chancellor and the rest of those guys that were on this side here, they also had different mentality. So you had 3 groups of people that wanted to have revolutionized the country against the one-party system. So they were organized. But in contrast, what happened in Tunisia, they were not organized. It was just a street settler, a street peddler. He has his bread, buy your bread, buy your bread, buy your bread. The police had an ordinance. My man, you can't sell on the sidewalk. Took his bread, beat him up, not handle him. Out of frustration, he poured gas on himself and literally killed himself. The people got angry. They removed the government. You could see the spontaneity with that revolution. But other places like Libya, it was organized through Western influence. Again, through Western influence. And Gaddafi made it very, very clear to the layman people. He said, today is Benghazi. You tell your children to stop. Benghazi fell. Tripoli. Gaddafi was caught and killed by a little. So it's sad. So when you say, what is the core philosophy that drive these people, or at least that motivate or serve as a precipitating factor for which they decide to revolutionize, it's just about emancipating Africa, reclaiming the land of Africa, expelling Western powers from the continent, and deciding our own destiny. We have our resources. We decide what to do with our resources. We decide who to sell it to, how much we're going to sell our resources. You cannot tell us, for example, places like Burkina Faso, for each gold that leave Burkina Faso, rare earth mineral like gold that leave Burkina Faso, France has 50%. How can France get 50%? France is gold not for you. How can you get 50% of the poor gold? Each gold that leaves Burkina Faso, you get, I think, about 15 francophone country over there. France dominate everything. You saw what happened in Ivory Coast with Laurent Gbagbo and the current president Alassane Ouattara. Alassane Ouattara, sorry to say, he was a rebel. Laurent Gbagbo claimed that he won the election. The Western power supporting Alassane Ouattara in Ivory Coast, they said no. Laurent Gbagbo, you did not win. Instead, Alassane Ouattara won the election. There was certain part of Ivory Coast, election could not have gone up there because the rebels are occupying certain place. We saw the story. We know the story. The French jet bombers, the fortress that Laurent Gbagbo was in, they bombed that place. They arrested Laurent Gbagbo and turned Laurent Gbagbo over to Alassane Ouattara at the Gulf Hotel in Abidjan. And the president sitting down, going on the way on, and Ouattara passing, going upstairs. So it's hard. So the core value that drove those guys is just to remove Western influence from Africa, reclaiming the land. Y'all leave us alone. And we have other people, like the young kid you talk about, I'm sorry to call him kid, but the guy you talk about, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, a very young and astute man. The resources of Burkina Faso belongs to Burkina Faso. Let us build our country. Western power, y'all leave us alone. So that's what drove all of these people. I would like to pause to give you a chance to ask more questions, or at least
Thank you very much. Again, for the benefit of time, we'll try to be succinct in our responses. We know tonight this particular show is just one part of the many episodes we have. So this is more of a series. I have tons of questions to be asked, but we're not going to be able to finish all the questions because Mr. Duopu has to leave. So then, Mr. Duopu, as a political scientist, this question is just straight to the point, straightforward. How does revolutionary leadership differ from political activism?
Political activism is a sum total of activities in society. Sometimes they are very subtle, sometimes they are very overt, and sometimes they are very public. Subtle in the sense that, you can have civil disobedience, you can have what is called a conscientious objection to laws that you think that are abhorrent in a society. You can even reject to go to war. You can reject your own country. If there's a war being fought, like what Muhammad Ali and other people did, during the Vietnam War, conscientious objectors. Those are actions that are revolutionary in themselves, because it's about social consciousness. It's about how you view society, how you think the political elites are manifesting themselves as super gods, as demon gods. So as these things manifest themselves in society, revolutionary actions are easier to come to the fore because it's not based on any, it's not based on any declaration of anything per se. It's not written rules. It's not based on any ascription of any political ideology. It just happens, and you find out that society, in that chaos, somebody emerges, somebody becomes the political authority. But I will go back to the same point that the people are the custodians of power. Excuse me. And any time that power is taken away, there will also be a point in history where that power has to be reclaimed. And I go to Nat Turner you talk about. Nat Turner was just like the guy in the Arab Spring who was just a bread seller or a street hawker. Nat Turner was just a poor carpenter. A carpenter who led revolutionary action in Virginia, a black man. He didn't live long. He lived to the age of 30, I think, 29, 30 years old. But his action spewed a lot of social discontent in the South, the hard belt of America, Virginia, because that's where the political elites were based, That were the political elites, the people who were the political authority in America in those days, in the 17, 18, and 1900s. They were based in Virginia. So for this young, uneducated carpenter to lead such an insurrection against the political elite, that spoke volumes in terms of the black consciousness, the black movement that spilled over to Garveyism, that spilled over to Du Bois, that even manifested itself in the pre-independence period of Africa. Like you talk about Nkrumah, you talk about, let's talk about somebody like Leopold Sédar Senghor of Senegal, who conceptualized what is being called African negritude. If we read about African negritude, it is about the social consciousness of the African people. Because Africa itself was divided. Intellectuals, public intellectuals, social commentators, political actors in Africa, they were divided on the way forward. Some were beholden to the status quo. Some, in every society, there will be people who benefit from the spoils. The lumpen bourgeoisie class, we talk about it all the time. So even the African consciousness movement, there were features, there were schisms, there were diversions. People were skewing away. There has to be that consciousness when Senghor talked about, and Senghor was highly educated. He went to Sorbonne. Sorbonne is the Harvard of France. Senghor was one of the guys who was in the French Academy rewriting the French language literature. So he was a public intellectual, but he was determined to change the social consciousness. That guy could have been co-opted by the French, political establishment. He talked about Nkrumah. He talked about the pre-independence movement of Africa, where you had people in southern part of Africa, like Unjoma, like Kaunda, like Joe Slovo. And Joe Slovo was white, but he had an African consciousness, So these consciousness had some level of solidarity, but there are also points of diversion. So as Africa projected itself as a single front, there were internal and external conspirators that were bent on making sure that Africa did not have that unifying force in terms of the economy, in terms of social consciousness, in terms of that drive to enhance the well-being of its people. So you found out in that movement, especially between the 40s, 50s, and 60s, as African countries were trying to gain independence, there were internal conflicts, even within the revolutionary class who were fighting for independence. There were people who were colluding with the colonialists. And even today, there's still collusion in terms of, free market, in terms of the rise of multinational corporations going to Africa, seeking concessions. These people are working on behalf of the colonial masters. These people are siphoning the resources and bringing it, like Herron talked about, France, talking about, the diamond and minerals from those countries. They're having a say in who gets what, when, and how, where the market will be, who's setting the market structure, who's setting the rules in the market economy. So Africa itself as a, political entity is not even competing with outside, but it's competing with itself. Because if you look at the volume of intra-African trade, and I know people talking about tariffs and other things in America today, but look at the volume of intra-African trade between and amongst African countries. It's so negligible. We're not trading with each other. We are trading against each other. So how can you have a united front like the EU, where they can come on a single banner, have a single currency, have a single monetary regime, and project itself as a single economy? So they are stronger when they come together because their currency is backed by a lot of, and those resources themselves, ironically, come from Africa. So, can you imagine that if Africa could only harness its monetary and fiscal policies into a single regime, how powerful Africa will be? But no, they are internal and external actors. They are multinational corporations, even richer than nation states in Africa. So it undermines the whole notion of sovereignty itself. Because take for instance a company like Apple or IBM is far richer than maybe the entire West Africa. You talk about a company that has a projection of almost $1 trillion. If you look at the GDP of most West African countries, maybe excluding Nigeria, if you put that together, if you lump that together, it doesn't reach the corporate balance sheet of Apple. So are you saying that Liberia and Apple are on the same page? I know Liberia can claim sovereignty because it's a country, but Apple is far richer. Apple can determine maybe who becomes president of Liberia. They can determine who gets in power based on their, economic wherewithal. So those are conceptual frameworks that have been used in Africa since, the end of slavery, when people started to come back to the continent. Even in modernity, in today's day, Africa have not reached that point. And we talk about Gaddafi and other people who, were so conscious. We're talking about Pan-Africanism, Pan-Arabization. Those concepts are just become elusive, because we have not harnessed our resources to benefit us as a corporate entity. We're always going splinter. So we go splinter, they use you as a splinter group.
So that was quite power-packed because of time factor. Messi will have to hold you there. And I have two more questions, and we'll kind of wrap up here. And we'll continue this. This will be the first episode. We'll continue next week on the same series, Reclaiming Africa, the rise of revolutionary leadership and the awakening of a people. So now I will then move on to Herron, ask you this question, and hopefully Matthew will close up on the next question. What do Western narrative? Well, let me ask the question this way: why do Western narrative often villainize African revolutionaries?
It's very simple. Because of control. They want to have complete dominance over the continent. So as a result, anything that they consider to be a threat to their own aspiration, they will try to eliminate it immediately by demonizing, and to use the word villainize those people, because they want to be in control. Can you imagine places like Ivory Coast? I know that Ivory Coast is the world's largest producer. They hand the hell. You are the world's largest producer of cocoa, which is about maybe just around 38%. It's been exported. How can you be the world's largest producer of cocoa, Mr. C. Ayiti Williams, but you're not the world's largest producer of chocolate? How? How is that possible? Like what Mr. Mansfield Duopu was saying. Most of the resources come from Africa, then exported to Western countries, and the Western countries benefit. And the African countries that inherited those resources through the blessings of God cannot benefit. Go in our Dama mine in Liberia, places like Westware, Lofa Bridge. See Liberians all in a hole looking for gold and diamond. And sometimes it collapses on them. In fact, I think I saw a video on, I think it was YouTube or one of these social media. I don't know, where was that? I think it was in Bombing County, probably about a week or two. Liberians are on a gold mine. And they started to dig, started to dig. And the entire earth just imploded on them. And it died instantaneously. There's no yellow machine to go and remove the earth from on top of those bodies. So people had to use manual labor, let's show, to take out the dirt, to haul those bodies from there. And whereas those European countries or Western countries, including the United States, they're benefiting from the sports and carnage of what our people are experiencing over there. It's sad, Mr. Williams, but what can we do? But this requires a collective effort. And make no mistake, no one should tell you that changes in Africa, especially places like Liberia, starts from the bottom. I don't want to believe that concept. That changes starts from the bottom up. No. Now, in contrast, places like the United States, you can say, yeah, it's possible. Changes can start from the bottom. We saw what happened here in 2008. Let's go back as far as 2004. President Barack Obama was not even giving it an invitation to go to the Democratic Convention. Who knew him? No one knew him. He lay apartment complex he was in. He never even had a heater. He watched the convention on TV. He started with a community organization. So in places like the United States, you can see changes start from the bottom and rises up to the top. In Liberia, within my opinion, of course, I'm always right, at least about 99.9% of the time, changes starts from the top. If you start from the bottom in Liberia, you're going nowhere. Like, for instance, if you're working in the Ministry of Education and you try to bring changes, they're going to fire you the same day. If you work in Freeport and you're at the bottom and you talk about reforming the structure that is on the ground, you're done. You're an all-liar. You're an all-caste. They will get rid of you. So it's so sad that Africa is blessed with a vast ocean of material possession, but yet it's our people squander in poverty, abject poverty, that we can't even afford to feed ourselves. I mean, I just seen it like the way I see it, bro.
So thank you for that response. And then I'll ask Mr. Duopu the last question. And then that will be followed by his closing remark, and you would do as well. And then we'll close for the night. Hopefully next week we'll continue on this particular topic, reclaiming Africa, the rise of revolutionary leadership, and the awakening of a people. With that being said, Mr. Duopu, My question to you, what makes Burkina Faso's current movement different from past revolutions?
Well, the military intervention in a political system, there are several justification for the military intervention. If you study military and politics, you study something called the Caesarean theory.
Walk us through.
The Caesarean theory is, let's bring it to medical science, biology, where a mother is pregnant and the child have come to term, and that mother cannot have that child naturally, and there will be some cesarean, operation to sever the child from the mother, either for the child to live or the mother to live, or for both of them to, in the best case scenario, for both the mother and the child to live. But in the worst case scenario, maybe they'll be making sure that the mother survives, and maybe the child, just a cost benefit. But in a military intervention postulation, I'm trying to make this also Caesarean theory, where in a political system, the military can justify its intervention based on the fact that society has reached that point, that apogee, where the tension in society, the conflict is brewing, is at a saturated point, at a boiling point, where that conflict has the propensity to tear that society, to bring about social dislocation, social upheaval, to the point where that society might disintegrate. The military can justify its intervention. So I think what the guys in Burkina Faso, the justification for their intervention is based on that Caesarean theory, from what I've studied as a political scientist and what I have observed. But I think what they have benefited from is the fact that the people of that society, they want to be united, they want to come back together, they want to have a singular purpose, a singular vision, and to see the military intervention as that springboard for their forward movement, for their society to come together, to project itself, to be self-sufficient, self-reliant, because that's what the military guys have espoused, that Burkina Faso will look within itself, that will harness everything within its borders in terms of their material well-being, will make sure that foreign influence is far from their borders. That when the French were there, they were expelled. The French has been there historically, their protectors. But the fact that the French were expelled, it means Western influence is being expelled. So if you look at the Sahel, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, what their leaders have been espousing is that they'll be looking within. And they've also made serious strides to even move away from the Economic Community of West African Union, African States sub-regional body, ECOWAS. That is a big and bold step to say, no, we don't want to be part of ECOWAS anymore as a regional body. So you see, the whole concept of African being united, there is a classic example that even at the regional level of just 16 countries, now 3 of those countries have walked away from the regional agenda. Because if that regional agenda is there, it's about trade, it's about interconnectedness in the sub-region. It's about making sure that they can have now they have a single passport. They're moving towards a single monetary regime, moving towards a single fiscal and monetary policy. Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali, who were original members of ECOWAS, are not members of ECOWAS today. They have their own bloc. So if there's even external aggression. How do you even, deal with that external aggression? And now there's been accusations here and there spewing around that people want to overthrow from Cote d'Ivoire and all that. So we can't have a singular purpose in Africa because of all these internal and external maneuverings. So it undermines Africa's quest to reclaiming its stature in global affairs. Because you can't go in the global economy, as a single country. You don't even have the wherewithal. You have no leverage. You can negotiate any trade agreement with any big power because it's a asymmetrical relationship. It's not even level, even playing field. The United States alone can negotiate a trade deal with entire Africa. What they call the AGOA, where Africa can send its agricultural produce to the United States without tariff. I don't know how that AGOA thing has been factored in this new Trump tariff regime. But back prior to Trump, you could send anything from Africa once it's agricultural related to the United States based on the AGOA agreement. It has no trade restriction, tariff restriction, I should say. So now the new reality now, everybody's looking within. There's the rise of ultra-nationalists, even in Africa. They're not looking even across the border in terms of regional cooperation. The whole regional cooperation thing has dissipated. Everybody fighting for himself. We're not fighting collectively as a bloc. Because if we go as a bloc, we have more leverage than going alone. And the people who are working against us they want us to go alone so they can have a fair, have a more superior say. So as we ponder on these things, as there's, this lecture series, as it goes through the couple of weeks, these are some of the things that we have to look at. We have to look at that whole notion as postulated by Senghor, negritude. What makes you an African? What is that black consciousness? Right now, African countries in North Africa don't see themselves as Africans. They see themselves as Arabs first, but they're in the continent. Northerners don't see themselves as Africans now. They see themselves as Arab. They're part of the Arab League. The most skewed towards Arabia because of the economic benefit they can accrue from that relationship. They're accruing nothing from being member of the AU or, other regional bodies in Africa. So we ourselves now, we're looking outside of our region. We're not even collaborating regional-wise. So there's no regional cooperation, really. So you have ECOWAS where have this, power to kind of superimpose himself on other countries, that if there's domestic issue in that country, they can come and intervene, all that stuff. Nobody's looking at ECOWAS coming in and try to change the domestic policy of our country or any other country for that matter. It's just based on paper agreement. The agreement are not being followed through. So we have the spirit of ECOWAS and comes in, let's settle it this way and, make amends. People say, well, we're not listening to ECOWAS. So it undermines even regional cooperation.
Okay. Thank you. Guess you give us your closing remark and then we will.
Well, in closing, it's a very, provocative discussion. It brought us on, the survival of Africa as we know it. Because in the next 100, 200, 300 years from now, we don't know how the world will be. But from what we can just deduce, I believe that Africa is at a very inflection point. It's at a precipice, of to see how it projects itself globally. Because, like I said, it's a big fight out there. It's about nationalism. It's about economic survival. resources are becoming scarce and scanty. Your resources are not, endless. There's a short supply. Now in our country, we have all the mines. The mines are being depleted. Are we trying to change our economy to make it more service-oriented, to make our economies, driven towards technology and other things? Are we still stuck in these natural resources? Other countries are making strides. The tiger economies of Singapore, Malaysia, Taiwan, they are making things. They are in technology. They are service providers. How our economies will look in the next 100 years? Will we be able to compete globally, or will continue to be the recipient of finished goods, whereas we send our natural resources abroad and we get finished product at a higher price? So it undermines our own economies, and right now international relations is all about economic relations. The whole notion of superpower or alliance construction, those are primitive and obscure notions of international affairs. So are we increasing intra-African trade? How is Liberia trade relationship with Guinea, Sierra Leone, Ivory Coast? Are we taking about things and taking it to those countries to sell? Are we engaging them to make sure that we harness our currencies to use a system?
Hello, we lost him, right?
Yeah, it looks like.
Right.
Like give you a couple of seconds, maybe 20 seconds, he'll probably come back on.
So that is the status quo now. But I want to thank you for the discussion, and I hope that we can all look at this thing that's evolving in Africa, and how do we reclaim Africa's role. Revolutionizing the thought process of Africans is key, like the We Too movement tried to project, because it would take serious social consciousness, for people to believe in themselves. So thank you, and thank Mr. Herron for the opportunity to engage with both of you tonight.
Excellent. Mr. Herron, quickly, we will circle back to you for your closing remark. Thank you for showing up. Now, you will give us a closing remark so we can close the curtain.
Yeah. Again, I would like to extend my profound thanks and appreciation to you for at least inviting me and Mr. Duopu on this show here. In closing, Africa is on the precipice of being transformed into something that we have never seen before, provided we have one unity of purpose. If you look at the United States, for example, President Donald J. Trump, he has one agenda. He has a couple of agendas, but at least he prioritizes one, at least for now. America First agenda. America First agenda is President Trump's agenda for America. In other words, he said far too long America has been abused, used, and exploited, and it's about time that we prioritize the United States of America. Now, he has only 4 years to power, and we don't know what the outcome is going to be with his America First agenda. Now, can we apply that same agenda to a specific country in Africa? For example, to say Liberia First agenda? Can we say Guinea First agenda? We cannot go solo. That's the way I see it. Remember, the United States is about 50 countries coming together to make one country called the United States of America. But they will not say 50 countries. They will say 50 states. 50 states coming together to make one country. So if we try to copy the model of the United States or President Donald J. Trump, America First agenda, I don't think we're going to succeed. So let us start from our own country. Then we can expand it into a regional project like ECOWAS. If we do that, we'll be able to have more power and more influence and leverage in negotiating. But if we decide to go independently, you cannot go independently against the United States that have 50 states coming together to make one country. Liberia is almost like the size of Ohio. Ohio is the size of Liberia, just one state. But if we come together as countries to make one, like ECOWAS, that is comprising of probably 15 countries coming together to say, you know what? We have one unity of purpose. We have one currency. We have one passport. We can decide our own trade policy, how to negotiate. And that region, West Africa, is a very powerful region. Can you imagine a country like Ivory Coast is accounting for 38% of cocoa in global trading? 38%. They export pretty close to 22 million tons of cocoa annually. Liberia, for example, we still have rubber over there. Even though we may not be on top of the world or will not be the world's largest producer of rubber, probably it could be another country like maybe Malaysia, but yet and still, we still have power. So if you have all of these African countries, like places like Burkina Faso, that get all the resources, you get all of the African countries coming together with one public policy formulation, all of these African countries coming together, one monetary and fiscal policy to say, you know what? We're not going to go independent anymore as a country. Instead, we're going to go as a region. If we do that, we'll be able to achieve a lot. We'll be able to negotiate. But you get a country like Liberia, maybe the second largest producer of rubber, trying to challenge the United States. I have 50 states coming together to make one country called the United States. You're nothing. You get a country like Ivory Coast going against the United States. You're nothing. Even going against the EU. So my closing argument here is, we can start from our own country. We start working, and ECOWAS has to do more, that we can all come together, something like a conglomeration of countries coming together to make one powerful country, or at least region, in order for us to negotiate fairly that will benefit the people of our continent.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to share time and space with these two bright brains, these intellectuals. As we all know, tonight the topic was reclaiming Africa, the rise of revolutionary leadership and the awakening of a people. As we close this episode, I leave you with this: revolutions are not born overnight. You know, they are sculpted in the fires of courage, clarity, and sacrifice. Our ancestors planted seeds of liberation. It is our duty to water them, not just with words, but with actions, education, and unity. Africa is not just rising, Africa is awakening. And with every heartbeat, every liberated mind, we move closer to a continent that no longer asks for freedom, but takes freedom. Until next time, family, stay revolutionary. Thank you very much for coming. Mr. Herron, thank you very much, as well as Mr. Mansfield. This is the We Too Are Liberians movement. I've been your host as usual. I look forward to next week's show. Hopefully, we'll have another exciting one. Be prepared, because I sent out the memo for next week's topic, but pretty much it's just going to be a continuation of what we talk about tonight. So you have a good night, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week.
Peace. Time out.
All right.
Simple life. It's all we want to live. Give me food, give me clothes, give me love, and give me shelter. Simple.